So this is the whole point of the 6th chapter of the Maimer. Bitul, that through bitul, shuklalos ha'inin sheYisrael monin levana. Right, so he kind of goes through the whole Maimer here. What is the idea that we count by the moon? Hainu she'omdim ba'avodasam b'maimer matzav shel levana. That means we are standing in our service in a certain posture of moonness. What does it mean? Maimer matzav means like a standing, which means kafi shehi betachlis habitul, as the moon is in a state of total bitul, beregesh shekodem molad halavana, which is the moment before the moon is born. So the whole idea that Jewish people count by the moon, that we're moon-like, is that we're empty. So this is a total repeat of what he said in the first chapter of this Maimer. Even though it's chapter 3, the first 2 chapters were like just a summary of the original Basi Lagani. So he starts off by saying there, from the Maimer and the Alter Rabbi, that Bayom Hazeh Bao Midbar Sinai. This day they came to Midbar Sinai. Who remembers the word over there? What does Bayom Hazeh mean? They learned that Yom Hazeh means Rosh Chodesh. Why? What is the drasha? Yom Hazeh. Yom and Zeh. Those 2 words. Remember? Chapter 3. Yom and Zeh. So we say Yom is light, revelation. Zeh is Chokhmah, if you remember. Why is Zeh Chokhmah? Zeh. Why is Zeh Chokhmah? So we said Moshe prophesied with the word Zeh. And everybody else prophesies with the word Ko. Remember that whole thing? So why does that mean Zeh is Chokhmah? Why is Moshe Chokhmah? You guys need a little refresher course, huh? Why is Moshe Chokhmah? Come on, Yaron. We're used into this. What is the thing? Because Moshe and Aaron respectively said Nachnu Ma. Nachnu Ma. Remember that? What is Nachnu Ma? What are we, right? So why does that represent Chokhmah? Yeah? Rabbi Hoffman?
Because it ends with Ma.
Yeah, it ends with Ma.
Nachnu Ma.
Right.
Like Anachnu, that's the 2 first letters, and Ma is the last 2 letters. Chokhmah.
Wait, the first 2 letters? What do you mean?
Achma.
No. Because you say Nachnu, right? So it's like the, yeah. Nach, forget about it. I'm just trying to.
No, but the main thing is Ma.
Ma.
So why is being a Ma a Chokhmah? Because of Chokhmah, right? Chokhmah is called Koach Ma, the power of Ma. So when Moshe, it's always brought like that. Whenever you want to say that Moshe is Chokhmah, you say, he said, Nachnu Ma, we are, what are we? So in other words, it's not a question, it's a statement. We are Ma. What is Ma? The Koach of Ma, which is Chokhmah. So that's called suddenly Zeh, because Moshe said Zeh, so that means Zeh equals Chokhmah.
It's a lot of times.
Yeah? No, but I guess, I don't know exactly. This is like, when did he say Zeh? When's like the famous Zeh? I don't know. Yeah, okay. So when he prophesies with Zeh. Whereas the others prophesy with Ko, mostly. That's like kind of how it comes down.
He was in trouble.
What's that?
I mean, this is the whole idea of the Slav.
Right.
Nachuma ki kalinu. I mean, we're going to read it to Shabbos.
Ki salinu alinu.
Right. The guys were hungry for meat.
Yeah, no, for sure the context matters. I'm saying, but usually it's just brought down the end that he called himself a Ma. That they were looking to him for the answers, and he says, like, don't look to me, I'm just, what? I'm nothing. Okay, but...
So then he was an empty flea at the time.
Okay, exactly. So that's the idea of, because Moshe's a Ma, and Moshe says Zeh, so we hear that Zeh is also a Ma. Zeh equals Chokhmah.
He also needed help. He needed to produce meat. Nachuma, what do you want?
Right?
But then Hashem is doing the same thing to him. At the Yam Suf, he says, "Matitzak alive." What are you fetching? Stop praying. Start. You gotta do what you gotta do. Not right. So he says, "Matitzak alive."
Okay.
So that's also ma. So Moshe is saying to God ma, and God saying to Moshe ma, in the same parsha. Which is kind of interesting.
Interesting. Okay.
I don't know if it means anything.
I never heard that, but it's possible. Listen.
No, I mean it's there, right? I mean, what does Hashem say to him? You know, the Egyptians are ready to kill them, and Hashem said, "Mati, what are you screaming to me for?" Which means, why are you praying? Why are you praying? Sometimes you got to pray, and sometimes you got to act. And then what's his face jumped in, and then that was the end of it. So it's ma in the same parsha.
I hear you. That's cool. Okay. Anyway, yeah, it's from this week's parsha. So, from here, what we're getting is that when it's Hayom Hazeh, Zeh is an Indian of Chokhmah, and Hayom Hazeh, the idea is that from Chokhmah comes Yom, because Yom represents revelation, Chokhmah represents bitul. So if you'll bitul yourself, you'll get Yom. So Hayom Hazeh, why does it refer to Rosh Chodesh? Not like the no moon, but the beginning of the moon, because that's the beginning of revelation, that's a result of the bitul. So the whole Rosh Chodesh idea that he's bringing out here, that we count the moon, and therefore our voter should be in a situation like the moon, is that when you bitul yourself, the next thing that happens is you arrive at a Yom Hazeh, which means that you're a bitul, and therefore there's Gilui that comes as a result of your bitul. Right? And why was that the necessary preparation for Matan Torah? Because that's the whole way of getting the light of the Torah to come out. You have to mavatzal yourself to it. And that therefore the first day they came to Har Sinai, 7 days of preparation, that was the first day, to give them this indication, you're going to get a Torah, and the only way to get the light out of the Torah is to bitul yourself.
You had all those days to prepare for the
yeah, each one gave some other quality of preparation, but the original preparation, which you could say for sure, like you're saying, was found through all of them, was this is the key to get the light of the Torah. Va'al yedei zeh ba'u midbar Sinai, right? That's how, va'yom hazeh ba'u midbar Sinai. How do you get to Sinai? With this quality of the moon, of bittling yourself. U'makablim Torah mitzvaseha ba'ofen she'al yedam mishani mesolam hazeh atachtun, and they receive the Torah and its mitzvahs in such a way that through them they can change the olam hazeh atachtun. They can change this lower world. The yos lo yisbarach dir b'tachtuni. Right? If you'll bitter yourself, that means you have the access point to get godliness to come into the physical world. And therefore you can change the world and do what? Make it into a dwelling place for Hashem, which is called Mahapchim HaKesher V'Sheker HaOlam L'Tziruf Keresh. So that process, basically making yourself a moon, allowing yourself to not be there, and allowing light to come in the place where you once were. It's not like you disappear. You're still a human being, but the whole being that you were is now no longer sheker. It's no longer kesher. What do you say? Kesher said here is a bad thing, because the kesher is the knot that keeps the kuf and the reish connected to existence. Sheker obviously doesn't need any explanation why it's bad. But those two things, when you'll bitul yourself, they don't disappear, they just become a keresh. They turn into a beam. Yeah? You following this? Sure. Ume'akeresh ma'amidim es hamishkan. And what is that beam now that you have? That beam is the first step to making a mishkan. In other words, it doesn't, I guess making one keresh does not make you a mishkan. But now that you have like the tool down, how do you make a keresh? You empty yourself out and you can suddenly transform all of your being here into a godly being. So you build that up into enough little parts and you have a mishkan. You now are like a sort of a central, stage of revealing God in the world. Asher bova al yado, that in it and through it, yeva shachanti basocham. Now they have a mishkan, you can get to the idea of v'shachanti b'socham. Hashem says, I will dwell within them. So now you got not just a board, you've got a whole house of God. V'achar kach nimshach ma'avoda zu b'chol ha'olam kulo. And this is what he's saying earlier, that about the idea of the windows of the Beis HaMikdash, that they point out, they open up to the outside because their inyan is spreading light to the world. So once you make a board, then you can make a mishkan. Once you have a mishkan, you can. This is the avoda that brings light to the whole world. So in other words, I don't know. I had this class in Ascent the other day with this very kind of radical left-wing young girl. Just me and her in the class. It was great. I actually had a really nice thing, but she was like, we were talking about mitzvahs and Torah, and she's like, well, how does this have to do with like Tikkun Olam, which is basically the version of Judaism that you hear in a Reconstructionist synagogue, right? Because what's Judaism is about is healing the world. What is all this like Torah mitzvahs nonsense? Like, aren't we just out to heal the world? How do you? So how do you heal the world? By like putting on tefillin? You know, what does that have to do with Judaism? So I explained to her that when we do our mitzvahs, it automatically has this effect on the whole world, which sounds like very mystical. So I said, let me break it down for you. It's very simple. You think you're going to heal the world by like going and shaking hands with the Palestinians and making peace with them and peace on earth. Like so, therefore, let's like constantly go in that pathway of just like making peace with the Palestinians. Well, sadly, we've been trying it for 70 years. It doesn't seem to work. They don't like us. We can't get it together. Whereas if we just do our mitzvahs, which is that. It doesn't seem particularly, PC or worldly organized. But we're like, on the contrary, this is our land, and you don't own it, we do, and we have to do special mitzvahs here, which do not, it doesn't entail your participation. Thank you very much. Which seems very exclusive and like not peace-oriented. But we know and we believe that if we would act the way we need to act in the land, according to the mitzvahs, it would actually bring peace not only to the land but to the whole world. It's like everyone's just waiting for us to do what we have to do. Which seems contrary to bringing peace to the world in the mind of like a liberal who doesn't understand and recognize the importance of Torah and mitzvahs. So this is what he's saying here. Well, how is a couple Jews in the desert building a little hut out of wood going to bring world peace? But it does, because when you bring godliness into one place, that's the first step you can do to bring godliness into other places. If you don't do it in a godly way, it's for sure you have no chance. All we can do is bitul ourselves and allow that. The whole idea of Yom Hazeh is it's the first little inkling of the moon after Rosh Chodesh, after the moon goes away, which it doesn't start with a lot of light. It starts with just a little tiny light. You start the revelation. That's what he's trying to say here. The moon will slowly grow and grow and grow. How does this mimer, begin? Basi Lagani Kala is Shlomo HaMelech speaking after 15 generations from Avraham. Moshe was just the 7th. It still took another, I don't know, what do we got left there? 8,
The key is bitul, and often with position coming from its voice, there's always a lot of self-righteousness around it.
Well, there is, but
they're not stupid people.
Who's they?
Say reform or reconstructionist people. They're not stupid people.
No, but uneducated. They're uneducated people. They're very well educated in like Harvard and Yale and so forth.
Who are you to say that they're uneducated?
Well, I am slightly educated. It's like you can go to someone and say,
self-righteous position.
No, it's just a fact of basically recognizing that you believe in the 13 principles of faith, let's say, and you know what they are. You're going to come to this lady, for example.
Take the model for education.
This lady.
Do you think the Rabbi ever said to a person who went past him, "I'm educated, you're not"?
100%. 100%. He didn't say it, let's say, on a one-on-one scale. We were saying like, pointing a person out and saying like, you're not educated, because he was like kind and loving. But in a public forum, for Brengens, dozens, hundreds of times basically, he's talking about the need to educate the unfortunate world of uneducated Jews. And not only is he saying that they're uneducated, he's willing to sacrifice the lives of people like you and me and send them out to educate them. Of course he recognizes that they're not educated. Of course he recognizes that they're children kidnapped, from Goyim, as Rambam states, that a Jew grows up in a house with no Torah mitzvahs, he's considered like has been kidnapped from birth because he's totally not educated about his entire upbringing. I mean, we have to call a spade here, man. There's an end to.
That's me. I'm that guy.
Yeah, also me. We all fell into that category. We grew up. We didn't know what Torah mitzvahs were. So how are we supposed to follow it? So therefore, what did we follow? The course and the course that they told us was going to work, which is basically all this idea of like, let's make peace in the way that normal people make peace.
That contradicts what you're talking here about. I think about bitul. I think from maybe I'm not understanding bitul, but I think bringing yourself in humility to the person, understanding where people are coming from, in terms of maybe more aspects of like healing, or like you say, kidnapped children, and that sense of awareness, bridging the humanity rather than levels of judgment and self-righteousness, which is what a lot of people outside of Haredi Judaism, Hasidic Judaism like that's what they have mostly the problem with when they're spoken down to. I'm just saying from conversations that I've had with a lot of people and experiences I've seen and stuff like that. I'm not trying to say it to rock the boat or to offend anyone. I'm just saying call a spade a spade. I'm trying to call a spade as well, you know what I mean? And if you don't see the whole spectrum of dialogue as Klal Yisrael, and people having valid opinions who are from humanity just as much as we are, then it's wrong, I'm afraid. I think judging people is wrong.
But look, I mean, Yasser Arafat was on board with that, right? We just had over here.
We'll talk about Jews.
Why? Why talk about only Jews? We learned this from them. We didn't learn this way of like getting along with our neighbors from Jewish sources.
I don't see what terrorists have got to do with dialogue.
No, because it's not terrorist, my friend. Yasser Arafat is only a terrorist in your mind, and that's judgmental, if I might say so. Like, have a little humility, would you? Because the rest of the world sees him as the man. Yeah, no, it's true, man. Like, Yasser Arafat, okay, of course he's a terrorist and a disgusting pig, okay, between you and me, but let's be humble here, you know, and keep ourselves, you know, modest and bitul. But bitul doesn't always mean that you're just smiling at everybody and make friends. You know, sometimes bitul means like Moshe Rabbeinu. Moshe, we can agree, was bitul. Moshe was out and slaughtered people. You know,
there's a difference between enemies and Jews.
No, but the point is that when Jews learn from their enemies how to conduct themselves in Eretz Yisrael, which is exactly what they're doing. In other words, they're taking a model out of the page of the Goyim to how to conduct themselves in Eretz Yisrael and what means will work in terms of making ourselves safe in the land, right? You have right now people being killed every day by stabbings, okay? So you have to ask yourself, what tactic would Moshe Rabbeinu take to solve this problem? And what tactic would Netanyahu take to solve this problem? Or it doesn't matter, you know? There's a certain like measure of being politically correct, basically, and making sure you don't. And what's that all about? It's about superficially making peace between two peoples, you know? Like if we come out right now with like our army and start like making intense laws that because the Torah says, mind you, anyone who's coming after you, who wants to kill you, you get up early and you kill them.
I wasn't talking about fighting terrorists. I'm not talking about. The issue with the Palestinians is completely.
Well, that's how we started this conversation, if you recall, because I was talking about this lady that I had this class with, and I was talking about how her vision of peace, or her and thousands like her, millions like her, is that if we sit down at the table with these people and shake their hands and hear the humanity in their story, that will lead us to further and further levels of peace. Right? That we are talking about the same conversation here. And I was saying that is not a way that's going to lead us to peace. That's a way that's going to lead us to more war. Even though it looks more bitul, it looks like you're hearing the humanity, it looks like you're hearing the other person's side of the story. If the other side of the story that you're sitting with is a terrorist who also secretly wants to kill you and will shake your hand and then spit on it when you turn around, that's not the way to go. And all I'm saying is that maybe that's not the Jew that's spitting on your hand, but it's the Jew's naivety that is going to sit down with a terrorist and shake their hand and pretend that that's the way to peace. Because they mean well. When it comes to judging their essential character, no, they're not a terrorist. They totally mean well. But they totally lack the true bitul. Because they lack education. To realize that the ways that they learned in college how to make peace with a terrorist is not the ways that the Torah tells us how to make peace with a terrorist.
The way you approach that, if you're going to go to someone and you're going to completely try and undermine their upbringing, that they've been brought up with since they were a child.
But is that the way that Chabad goes out and does things?
Huh?
Who does that? You know,
we talk about philosophy of education. It's not an easy discussion, but you get a lot of people coming in. You know, it's just like vulnerability. It's exploiting vulnerable. Are you building up the strong ones, or just sort of trying to patch together the weak ones? You know, that's what I'm saying. It's how you approach people. Often the ones you're actually arguing with are the strong ones, because unfortunately intellect does, like it's saying here, brings a big ego. More you know, the more you know, the more powerful you think you are, and that's what I think that's what's going on in this text. And how do you approach Jewish education with Jewish people? How do you approach it with bitul and sensitivity to where they've come from? It's a very difficult thing. I'm not saying I have all the answers, but you know, I've seen some other different perspectives because I've worked with healing and stuff, and a lot of that is actually around balancing yourself on a level of compassion, and you see that from a lot of great rabbis, where they can understand people on a level of compassion, the trauma and pain and upbringing and stuff like that, and then from there then you can bring the education. But laying judgment and self-righteousness on someone from the off, they're just gonna bounce off. They're just gonna repel that.
Those same great rabbis, those same great rabbis, they're great because they're reading a situation as it comes to them. In other words, when they're going to sit in a base medrash and they're going to study the mimer, they're going to for sure study it with who wrote the mimer. In other words, what the mimer is saying is that you have to take yourself out of the picture and let the mitzvahs override all of your thought, speech, and action. Okay, you can say that with a cherry on top, or you can say that with a gun in your hand. But the fact of the education part, like the message we're trying to convey, is the same, right? It's basically saying like everything you're doing, if it's not, I'm posing in the negative right now. You could pose it in the positive, but I'll pose it in the negative. Everything you're doing, if it's not conforming to nullifying your interest and allowing Hashem's mitzvahs to come through, which is you're not going to be able to receive the Torah, right? You have to go to a state of being absent, and then the light that comes out, therefore, is the light which of something beyond you, not your actions, but Hashem's actions, right? So let's say, that means love and peace and harmony. It also means 613 particular things that you have to accomplish versus anything else you might want to accomplish. In other words, all I'm saying, man, is that you can be a great rabbi.
What is bitul then? It's a question over what is bitul, because you're trying to say, love be like being a hippie.
Well, getting along with someone, having a nice conversation with them, and like hearing. No, that's not the only thing called bitul. Bitul also means you don't eat that, you do eat this, you don't give away that. You do, you know, it's like there's rules you have to follow. Bitul also means like a structured legal system, which you follow with a bitul. You follow it, and sometimes with an unbelievable bitul, even at the sake of your life. Like you have mesiras nefesh. Love and peace and like getting along with people and having compassion is good, you know, but it doesn't override and it is not.
So a stolen child, what you grab them and slap them and then just say, right, sit down, boom. And
well, if he's not a stolen child, let's say he's your child, that's exactly what you do with him. You put a yarmulke on his head when he's 3 years old. You put tzitzis on him. Did you ask him? Because communism, they were like, listen, let's not ask him. Let's not do that, because it's like stealing a person and like telling them how to think. Let's wait till he's like 20-something years old. Let him just like figure out whatever philosophies come his way in the meantime, and then like we'll ask him, you want Judaism or do you want whatever you grew up with? That's kindness to a person. Or you start when he's a tiny baby and you start putting words in his mouth.
But a student isn't a child.
But that's not true. That's not true. In other words, meaning what?
It's just become dependent on you.
No, but it's not about power, man. It's not about power. No, this is like maybe we all have our own reasons why we're sitting here, you know. So if there are such people that are weak and looking for a father figure, and you're just they're broken, and you're trying to therefore fix them, that's not what's going on here. You know, you can look and you can see a lot of things. I see other things that are going on here. I see like intelligent, strong, well-minded, powerful people who are looking to educate themselves, not looking to be brainwashed. And the truth is that we're coming with a very strong message of education, that this is the way to act and not this, you know? And yeah, you do that with a child and you do it with a student the same. Because they don't know the Torah. How are they going to, it's not a sin and it's not a judgment. There's 3,000 years of Torah Jewish education that they just missed, you know? So we're not telling them they're a terrible person because they missed it, but let's start right away in learning it, because you're wasting time every second that you're not conforming your behavior to this behavior. It's not called brainwashing. It's not called manipulating people. It is bitul, in fact.
The shorish of bitul?
The shorish of bitul? What do you mean?
Bet. What is the actual shorish? Is it bet?
Huh? And the word?
Yeah.
Yeah, batel.
And what is that from?
Well, it means bitul. I mean,
To cancel.
Yeah, to cancel,
To nullify.
to nullify. Yeah.
You know, like if you're going to cancel a program that is in the top.
Right. On a more, let's say, Kabbalistic
The ability
perspective,
to say no.
it's to surrender, basically. You know, to surrender what you were thinking to do with what somebody else wants you to do. That someone else should be God. You know, that's why I definitely, there's like a sort of like battered woman, you know, red light that can go on. We start talking about bittul, because if someone is bittul because if there's someone stronger than them trying to make them do something they don't want to do, so that's abuse, you know. So you could be a person who's bittul to an authority figure that's negative and who's dominating and bad. And I think that's what is coming out right now. Is like we're very sensitive to that. So you right away when you want to scream and say like, don't rape me, you know, because that's also called bittul. But if you're bittul to God, you know, it's also a complete domination and like and overcoming of every power that you have. But it's from goodness. You know what I mean? The word bittul in like sort of Hasidic language is the same as the word for toivel, which means you submerge yourself in a mikveh, which means you just cut yourself off from the air and you like surrender to this other reality where it surrounds you all around and there's no more you. You're just drowning in it, basically. So yeah, if that is like you're drowning in some kind of like social, political, societal thing, that's called evil. You know, that's being bittul to the reish and the kuf in our model. If you're bittul to the Eibishter, you're a godly entity. You start to shine godliness into the world, and you, the you, must disappear if for that to happen. So, I mean, I hear you when like it sounds scary and even demeaning when you're saying like everything you are has to go away. But that's what Hashem said. I'm giving you my Torah. So everything you are has to go away if you want it. You don't have to have it. You can do whatever you want to do. But if you want me to shine through you, there's not like sitting down and shaking hands and coming up with sentimental ways of like, you know, putting this philosophy. It's not about your philosophy. It's about my philosophy. And it's about you getting out of the way of my philosophy. Yeah, I'm God, you know? So I hear you, man. That can sound pretty over the top, you know, religious people for sure. Religion has made a lot of wars in the world. Not per se the Jewish religion, but people who get all self-righteous and decide they have the word of God, yeah, they kill people sometimes. You know, it can get totally out of hand. But that's the difference, I guess, I would say, between frum and really like over-the-top extreme Jews versus, God forbid, over-the-top extreme...
But that's a very extreme example. There's all gradations of that. And there's all sorts of like dialogues and perspectives and ways people present their thoughts. So there's, you know, you could argue that there's a lot of that just watered down. It's just they're not going to go out and blow themselves up as educators, but they could easily take advantage of people and you know, you talk about sexual abuse and stuff like that. There's all sorts of examples there.
So that's a corruption. But I'm saying the idea of like, what the Rebbe, you know, you could say, I saw a letter myself. The Rebbe, when we opened this yeshiva, we opened a letter to the Rebbe. And the Rebbe was talking to some guy who went to Russia. Rabbi Gorenstein, and we opened this letter. It was like our founding letter for the yeshiva. And he was saying that basically, the Rebbe said, I'd like to see a day when all the streets of Israel look like, you know, Mea Sharim. That's what he said. In other words, everyone's walking around dressed like this and talking like this. Like, this is like the vision of the Rebbe, that we should all be completely conforming. Now, does he want us to do it by force? No. Does he want us to do this by like strong convincing? Yeah. But that's the thing, is like we are on a mission to change people. And you could say that that's not bitul. You could say that's the opposite of bitul. You could say that's like domineering and it's not hearing the other person's perspective. But Avram Avinu did it. He went around to each individual in the world and he's like, I'm going to conform you to my philosophy right now. So you're right, it's the most dangerous thing in the world, or if it's coming from truth, it's the most precious thing in the world. And you need to, yeah, I mean, I hear you, it's scary because it is corrupted and there are people, you know, who are not, you know, everyone's has a certain injection of self, so you have to be careful. But at the end of the day, it's like a takeover. People are actively trying to change people and have them conform with the Torah. So it is like a bit of a aggressive thing. Even the Rebbe is the most aggressive. Yeah.
I mean, although I don't know if I agree with either of you, I think that selflessness and egoless is just a state of mind, and it doesn't have anything to do with your what actions one can take. So if one could be, calm and balanced inside, and then tell someone to do, you have to follow the mitzvot, it wouldn't be out of ego. But I think the difficult part is actually getting to that state, of egolessness, which is, very unpractical. But I think if someone is to do it in that sense, then it would agree with, what you're saying, right?
But we have this philosophy of like, even if you're not egoless, do the mitzvahs. And tell other people to do the mitzvahs. Like the Rabbi says, if you know the Aleph, teach Aleph. Right? What's that? That's like saying, I'm basically an uneducated person. I only know Aleph, but I'm already going to teach Aleph. So that's like defining the conversation is that I am not egoless, I really hardly know anything, but the little piece that I do know, I'm going to try and get you to do it. I'm going to try and get you to know it. I'm going to already like be it. And why? What's like the obsession, so to speak, with putting it on the other guy, And the idea is that because we're not dealing with human thoughts, human behaviors, we're dealing with godly instruments. So as soon as you know one, spread it. Because these are what makes a person egoless. You see, the way the world thinks is that if you become egoless, then you're like this perfect person, and then you can like sort of channel divinity. The way the Torah says, God already foresaw that people are not going to be perfect. So he said, I'll give you things that they themselves make you egoless, right? If you put on tefillin, the moment that you're wearing tefillin, you're egoless because this is my thing. And the very fact that you're doing it already is you're putting yourself out of the way and allowing me to shine through you. And all the mitzvahs are like that. So therefore, as long as you know Aleph, teach Aleph, because you're just teaching submission to God through every single one of them. I guess that's the concept of a mitzvah. A mitzvah is that, read the beginning of Tanya, is the idea of these garments are divine garments. They come straight from God. So when you wear them, you suddenly disappear inside of an egoless moment. Now, not every garment is so deep. Some garments are just action. Some garments are speech. Some garments are thought, though, which means it's already tapping into like really changing your behavior. Some garments are mamish, touch you even in the emotional sense that you actually can change. But we're taught, even if you're not going to become egoless and totally change and be like a transformed person, at least be egoless on the levels that you can access, which is your thought and your speech and your action. So even if you haven't become a perfect person inside, all of your outside is already crystal clean and pure. Because it's like a realistic Torah. It's telling you that you might not ever become that egoless person. The best you can do is just make certain external parts of yourself egoless, which is the thought, speech, and action.
I also find my own person like the most powerful, inspirational rabbis are the ones that are just, they're very clearly not living for themselves. They're living for a higher purpose. Every moment of their lives is for like a higher reason for existence. And when they're coming from that place, like, it's like, they're just like a tool in the hand of the maker. They're just like this cog in the machine, like the Rabbi. The Rebbe's a perfect example. Like he's just obviously coming from a higher place. This wasn't his plan. He's not. When you see that, then you see the bitul, because it's for a bigger purpose. It's not for individual gain. It's like 3,000 years in the making, or just a little. Moment in the whole huge scheme of this plan that's been acted from our ancestors.
Anyway, so just bringing things full circle back to this girl in the class.
Didn't mean to get all
No, it's all good, man. I mean, it's all going to the same place. I'm just saying, like what was I saying to her is that your little action which seems, to be like exclusive and insular, of just like taking care of your own, basically, is going to wind up actually being the biggest way you can tikkun olam. And why? Because the actions that you're doing are holy actions. And that's what we're saying in the Maimer. You're going to make a keresh. You can take one little piece of the world, and you're going to turn the evil falseness of it, which is the you, and you're going to get it out of the way and allow some divine message to come through you, which is putting on tefillin. And that's going to turn one board from the word sheker into the word keresh, from falseness into a beam. One beam might not be enough. You need to make a handful of these beams. But then if you do, v'shachanti basocham, suddenly you're going to have like this divinity dwelling in you. You say, oh, how does that help the world? Only my little piece of the world now has godliness in it. No, because the windows of the Beis HaMikdash face out, And if you make holiness in one little place, it is the only chance you have to healing the world around you. So we got to do what we got to do in this land based on what God says, and that's the best way to make friends with the terrorists. We also want to make friends with the terrorists.
Sure.
Should we finish the mimer quickly again? I think we're good. Okay. Chevra. Mazel tov. Mazel tov. Hold here.
No.
I'm just saying we gotta keep some sort of a schedule. We're talking about bitul.
Yeah.
Do you really want to make fun of terrorists? I don't.
It'd be much better than being enemies with a terrorist, I would think.
The whole idea is like to kill our enemies.